Since I started this channel, I've shared my opinions of quite a few rides with you guys in videos such as my review videos and my top 10 videos, but I've decided it's time I did a video more sort of generally of my opinions of UK coasters, and I'm going to be doing that using a website known as TierMaker. Now, TierMaker is something that started trending back in 2019, and it's basically a website on which anyone can sort of create, their own like tiers of like how, like ranking things, how good they are, and this can be sort of anything. People have done them for films, games, famous video game characters, stuff like that, just anything at all. And there's also been some made for theme parks. So today, what I'm going to be doing is using a tier list that has been made on UK roller coasters, and I'm going to be ranking them into different tiers, sorting them based on how good I think they are. I will pre-warn you guys that I haven't ridden all these roller coasters, so for some of them I'm going to have to guess, especially like the Fort Park rides in particular, because I've not been to Fort Park, obviously. I'd just like to point out that this is obviously down to solely my personal opinion, so please do not take offence if you disagree with how I'm ranking some of these rides, whether you think it's that I'm ranking them too high or too low. Like, don't be offended if I put your favourite roller coaster in one of the low tiers. But yeah, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell to make sure you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And without further ado, let's get into it. So here we are then on the UK roller coasters tier list. And yeah, I'll put a link to this in the description so that you guys can have a go at it as well. And if you want to share your opinions on these rides, because you can download and save these tier lists with the roller coasters in there and how you've rated them, be sure to send them by giving me a direct message on Twitter or Instagram. The links to those are in the description as well. So yeah, first of all then, we start off with a ride I've not really talked about, and that is Avalanche, obviously the Mack bobsleigh roller coaster at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I've actually not done this ride in a year or so. I think, yeah, pretty much a year really, because Josh and Danielle Hamley, who I go to parks with, aren't a big fan of it, and it's a ride really that I can take or leave. To be honest, it's quite bang average. It can be a bit uncomfortable with how the trains are designed, like the lap bars can sort of press into your stomach and stuff like that, so it's not the most comfortable of rides, but it's not unbearable. As for the ride itself, it is thrilling in how it's quite fast, and you do get some like positive and lateral g-force on the corners, that are quite moderate, but really it's nothing special, so I'm just going to put it in meh, because yeah, I should point out, by the way, the tiers ranging from best to worst, I'm sure most of you have noticed these anyway. So we've got world class, we've then got excellent, we've got good, we've got meh, we've got bad, and then we've got unbearable. So yeah, anyway, on to another Blackpool Pleasure Beach classic. We have Big One, the aerodynamics hypercoaster that opens at the park in 1994 as the tallest roller coaster in the world. Now, those of you who've been, watched the channel for a little bit, or when I say a little bit, literally like a month or two, will probably notice that I made a video. Basically, it was a review. This is one of the rides I reviewed, basically discussing how I think this ride is quite overhated, because I know a lot of people would probably be putting it like meh or under, mainly due to the fact that it can be a bit rough sometimes, and that it doesn't really have any airtime at all, although you do get a little bit on some of the hills on the back, like the very back of the train, but apart from that it literally doesn't really have any airtime at all, which really a coaster of that size should have. But I mean, the views you get on it are incredible. The first drop is still my favourite first drop on any roller coaster. I mean, I'd go as far to say it's my favourite drop on any roller coaster, really, let alone first drop. And yeah, it's just a really fun ride. And for 2020, they have done more than retrack the big one. I mean, yeah, this is a joke between me and Josh, but they did a bit of retracking over the closed season. And talking about Josh from Theme Park Mad, by the way, go and check out his channel. I might as well plug that, because why not? It's a great channel. He produces similar content to me, vlogs and stuff. And he's been at the parks when I've not been able to, because I can't go at the moment. So check out his for all the updates around the parks this year, because I've not been since February. Anyway, I'm going off on one now. But yeah, basically they retracked it, and the rides I've had on it since they retracked it are some of the best rides I've ever had on it. It's been smoother than ever. I've had 2 rides on it. They were both on opening day 2020. And yeah, I mean, I personally didn't find it too bad before. I've only ever had 1 ride, I'd say, on the big one, and it was my first ever ride in 2018, where I found it to be quite rough, to the point where it sort of ruined the experience a bit. And for that, I'd probably be putting it with Avalanche in Met, to be honest. But, and this is a but, my rides in 2019 and then 2020 have just got better and better and better, and I really do enjoy this coaster, despite its lack of airtime. So for that reason, it's going in good. It's an overhated ride, and yeah, I'm putting it in good. It is my, as I'm recording this, my number 4 coaster in the UK. But yeah, I think, you know, I could put it in excellent, but there are some rides in here that I think, or sorry, as well as, I definitely do, I can tell that for sure, rate higher than the big one that I feel like would sit better in that category. So, you know, personally, I think it's a good coaster. Next then we have Galactica. Another ride which I think is quite overhated. It's one that has featured in top 10s before. Those of you who watch my top 10 roller coaster in the UK video from 2019 will know that I rated this at number 6, I believe. Yeah, it was quite high. And yeah, the reason people tend to hate on this ride is because the flying position and sort of the restraints on there. It's a B&M flying coaster, obviously, that opened at Alton Towers in 2002, I should point out for anyone who doesn't know. Yeah, the restraints can be a bit uncomfortable. Personally, I don't find them that uncomfortable, but a lot of people do. And it's not got that much force to it. However, it's a really unique ride for the UK. It's the only ride of its kind in this country. It's the first B&M flying coaster to have ever been built. And yeah, it's almost quite relaxing, but I kind of enjoy it. It's silky smooth as well. And yeah, there's a good few near miss elements, like you go through a tunnel and stuff. And I don't know, I just really enjoy seeing sort of the view before you as you sort of fly through Forbidden Valley. And it's just, you know, I do find it quite a fun coaster. The only thing I would say is that when you're on the brake run for a while, it can get a bit uncomfortable. But I don't think that's too much of a big deal, and it's going with the big one in good. So there we go, because obviously I rate that at 6, big one at 4, and yeah, they're quite similar in my rankings. Next then, we have another flying coaster that is nowhere near as good, and is much more uncomfortable, and that is the Zamperle Volair flying coaster at Flamingo Land Hero. I personally don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, and it probably is a bit overhated, but that doesn't mean to say it's good at all. It is one of the worst coasters I've ridden, or thrill coasters anyway. It is quite uncomfortable. A lot of people say it's very rough as well. It can bash your shoulders about and bash your head and stuff like that. I mean, I remember coming off it with a headache the first time, but I would say it's more uncomfortable than it is rough. The main problems with it really are the restraints. Unlike Galactica, where you sort of sat in like a B&M invert, position, and this vest restraint comes down, and then you're basically tilted forward into the flying position. In Hero, you literally climb into this like torture cage thing. It literally is like that. You've got like your head on this like chin rest at the front. You stood up in this, by the way, and you have to stand on a ladder, and it can be really hard to figure out what rung you need to stand on the ladder so that you're sort of at the right height. And if you stand on the wrong one, it can make it really uncomfortable. And that's I should also say it's like uncomfortable anyway, even if you can figure out the right rung. And sort of your hands hold onto these like handles like in front of you, and it's just a really weird position to be in. I'll put a video on screen of the ride itself so you know what I mean, because it's really hard to sort of explain. Really, you need to see it to see what I mean. But yeah, it's not a good ride. It's going in bad. I wouldn't say it's unbearable, because I don't personally find it unbearable. Like, it is bearable, but it's one of those rides you ride once when you're there, and you don't ride again that day. I mean, some people would go as far to say that it's a ride sort of you ride for the credit and never ride again. But for me, it is bearable, and I will ride it once a day when I go. But I always just dread riding it and how bad it's going to be. The other problem is just the profiling of the track. The corners are just way too tight on there, and yeah, that can result in the ride being rough as well, because you end up basically getting whacked to the side and stuff. And not to mention, your back is literally unsupported, so when you go through the inversions on Hero, you will literally like flung around sort of this cage thing you're in. It's really weird, but I feel like because I'm small, it's a bit more comfortable. I feel like if I was taller, it'd be less comfortable, but it's not good. And yeah, next we have a much better coaster, and that is Icon, the Mack multi-launch roller coaster that opened at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in 2018. Those of you who have watched the channel like at all, because I mention this a lot, will know it's my #1 coaster, so it's going right up here to God tier. Or not God tier, sorry, but some other... I'm getting mixed up with some other tier lists that call this tier God tier, but world class. Whether it is world class or not is debatable. Some people would say that this ride is a bit overrated, and I mean, it's possibly a bit overrated when it was first opened. Like, I know I put it in world class, but you have people going, "Oh, it's a world class coaster, this," and stuff like that. It's debatably not, but because it's my #1, it makes sense to put in the highest tier. I wouldn't say it's world class, but it's brilliant for the UK, put it that way. And yeah, it's just because it's an all-round coaster. You know, it's got inversions, you've got helixes, airtime. The launches aren't anything special, but you do have them. It's just, yeah, it's what a coaster should be for me, a bit of everything, and it's just a really fun ride, so smooth, and I love those Mack lap bars as well. But to hear more about my thoughts on Icon, there's plenty of videos that you can check out on this channel, so definitely go and check that out. In the Blackpool Pleasure Beach playlist, they're all in there, so I'll put a link in the card in the top right so you can easily access that. Next we have the first coaster on this sort of that I've got to that I'm not actually ridden, and that is Nemesis Inferno, a B&M inverted coaster at Thorpe Park, similar to Nemesis at Alton Towers, which is the same ride type. I have ridden the original Nemesis, and this ride gets a bit of hate as well, actually, I think, because people compare it to Nemesis, which is widely sort of renowned as being one of the best B&M inverts on the planet, if not the best. And you know, there's a lot of B&M inverts out there, and because you know we have Nemesis in this country, I feel like people hate on this ride a bit. You know, give it a bit too much hate. And looking at it, it doesn't look like, when you look at it, it doesn't have like the vertical helix and stuff that Nemesis is renowned for in terms of how intense it is. So I can see why people may say it's a bit forceless if they're used to Nemesis. But then I've heard others say that it's just as intense, if not even more intense. And people, you know, some people saying like it's just as, if not better than it. It looks like a really good coaster. It's not as well themed by the looks of it. It's in the jungle area of Thorpe Park, and it's sort of themed to this volcano. But I like the look of it, I really do. You know, I watch it off ride and I watch POVs, and I think, you know, people, obviously I've never ridden it, so I can't accurately judge, but I just look at it and think, you know, it seems like people are giving this a bit too much hate, really. And I think it literally is solely down to the fact we have Nemesis in this country. So, yeah, in terms of my Thorpe Park rankings, obviously I've never been to Thorpe Park. I've predicted that this will be my 4th favourite coaster, below 3 others. There's obviously 7 coasters at Thorpe Park, and I think it belongs in good. I think I'll rank it sort of around sort of Big One and Galactica, sort of that level. So, you know, if I was to ride it now, it'd probably be about my 5th favourite ride in the UK. And that's counting sort of the other coasters at Thorpe, which I think will rate higher than it. So it will be below number 5 in my top 10, I'm sure. And I reckon it might make my top 10, to be honest. Yeah, I reckon I'm going to rate it sort of similar to the Big One and Galactica. Now for another terrible coaster. My least favourite coaster that I've ridden. I've ridden it once, I got the credit, and I never ridden it again. And it's Infusion, the Vekoma SLC at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Although it has a, you know, decent layout really, 5 inversions in there. It's the Vekoma SLC standard layout. So there's about 30 odd clones of these in the world, something like that. And yeah, it's a suspended looping coaster. That's what SLC stands for. So it's basically Vekoma's cheap take on a B&M invert, really. The B&M inverts came before Vekoma SLCs, so basically Vekoma saw B&M inverts and thought, you know, let's do a cheap version of this pretty much, and we ended up with Vekoma SLCs, which are widely regarded as one of the most painful, you know, the worst coaster types on the planet, really. And it is unbearable, so it's going straight in unbearable. Nothing else needs to be said about that ride. Your head gets bashed against the restraints constantly throughout a ride on most occasions. I've heard people have managed to get smooth rides on it, but this ride is just renowned for being really rough. I found the ride I had on it really rough, and that's all I need to say. Now on to another Vekoma SLC then, this time at Flamingo Land. And this time we're talking about Kamali. Now, I know I said all the bad things about Infusion and it being rough and unbearable and that, but Kamali is much more bearable. It's perfectly bearable. It's got softer restraints than the Infusion from what I remember. It also doesn't have the standard layout. It only has 4 inversions, but it is quite intense in places. Definitely not the most intense coaster in the UK, but you know, it pulls some good positive G's in places. But yeah, it's got a different type of layout. This is another ride I've done a review on, by the way, so make sure you go and check that out. I'll put a link in the card in the top right. And yeah, it's a really good coaster. It's nothing, you know, amazing, but yeah, I do enjoy a ride on Kamali, and for that reason I'm going to put it in good. It's a good coaster. It does rate lower in my rankings than the other coasters in good so far, because I do predict that I'll prefer Nemesis Inferno to Kamali. It just looks sort of more intense and better themed, so chances are I'm going to prefer it, unless it's like stupidly rough or something. But I mean, it's a B&M invert, so it probably won't be. You know, you might get the odd headbang, but yeah, you do get headbangs on Kamali a bit, but not as much as Infusion, and the restraints are nice and soft. So yeah, that's all there really is to say about it. Check out the review, obviously, for more details on this ride. in terms of my thoughts. But yeah, next then we're on to the first wooden coaster in this collection of roller coasters we have in front of us, and that is Megaphobia, Oakwood wooden roller coaster. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos on this channel, including ranking my wooden coasters from worst to best, you will know that I think this ride is very, very, very overrated. Not many enthusiasts in the UK have ridden it compared to the likes of the other rides on this list, because it is a bit out the way in the middle of nowhere in Wales. But yeah, people who've ridden this absolutely rave about it, saying it has all this ejector air time, like 15 odd seconds, you're completely out your seat. And as for the first drop and a few other sections on the ride, that is true. The first drop is incredible, but the airtime's just really over exaggerated on it. Not to mention the ride is also a bit rough to the point where it does take away from the experience a bit, and for that reason, and I know loads of you in the comments are probably going to be screaming at me for doing this, it's going in meh where it belongs, because for me it's really nothing that special, to be honest. First drop's really good, but after that it really is a very meh ride, to be honest. I don't know, the lap bars move around a lot on it as well, and you can get flung against them quite a bit because of the air time, and it's the very hard lap bars as well, and it's just not pleasant. So yeah, anyway, next ride on this list, Mumbo Jumbo, the S&S Loco coaster at Flamingo Land. It's a very unique ride for the UK. The restraints are a bit uncomfortable, not gonna lie, they do press on your shoulders. I would rather it had sort of normal OTSRs, but yeah, really, you know, S&S have sort of taken their own sort of take on those, if you get what I mean. So it does kind of have OTSRs, but they don't go sort of all the way down to like stomach level. They only kind of go over your shoulders, but you just press down so hard, you know. Especially you can get stapled on them like it as well, because sometimes like the people checking the restraints and stuff, you can get stapled. It's happened to me before, and it can be really uncomfortable if that happens. It's only happened once, but yeah, it can be uncomfortable. And then you have this like weird lap bar thing in front of you. I'm just not really a fan of the restraints on it, to be honest. I'm probably going to put it in meh as well. Like, it's okay, but it's my least favourite out of the sort of the big three roller coasters at Flamingo Land, not counting Hero as one of those. We've still got one of the big three to come as well, which I'll get onto later. Now, before then, I obviously ranked Nemesis Inferno, and now we're on to the original Nemesis, the B&M inverted coaster that opens at Alton Towers. Oh my word. But yeah, it opened at Alton Towers in 1994, Nemesis Inferno, obviously being at Thorpe Park. It was the first inverted coaster in Europe as well. So yeah, this ride is incredible. The way it's built in the terrain, you know, it's not even that tall, but it's built all sort of in this massive pit they've dug out for it underground, and it's incredible. The near miss elements you get with the rocks on there, the intensity you get from that vertical helix sort of into the 0G roll, especially if you're towards the back of the train. I do personally prefer the front on Nemesis for the views, and it can be a bit smoother as well. Sometimes the back you can get a few headbangs. But I do find that if you, this is a tip, sit forward a bit in your seat and put your head a bit to the left, it can help you to avoid some of the head banging, which is mainly a problem on the final barrel roll, I find, and sometimes the first corkscrew as well. This ride does have 4 inversions, like Nemesis Inferno, its younger brother at Thorpe Park, or younger sister should I say, because Nemesis is actually female. For those who didn't know, it's a female creature. I mean, Nemesis Inferno is just a volcano, so it's not really a living thing, but
hey ho, I just thought I'd say that. But yeah, so I mean, Nemesis is incredible. I was a bit underwhelmed actually when I first rode it because of how short a ride it is and the way people hyped it up in terms of its intensity. But just the more I've ridden it, it's sort of grown on me so much. I mean, before I probably would have sort of ranked it in the goods tier after my first ride, but no, it's going straight to world class. And many would say this ride is world class just because it's one of the best coasters of its type. It's widely renowned for that. But yeah, it is an incredible ride. My number 3 coaster in the UK. And yeah. Anyway, next then we're on to Oblivion. The one drop wonder. The original B&M dive coaster. Yeah, Alton Towers has got a lot of sort of, you know, original coasters really. It does have a solid lineup, that park. And I mean, for coasters I'd say Alton Towers, obviously I've not done Thorpe Park, definitely has the strongest lineup of coasters of any park in the UK because it's got so many and so many just good coasters. But yeah, Oblivion, it's only got one drop. I do wish it was a bit longer, but obviously it was a prototype, you know, the drop being the main feature of that, and the whole build up to it with the theming is so good. I love that. And then the drop itself, oh boy, it's an intense drop. It really does pull some G's at the bottom of that drop. You know, it's the second most intense, I'd say, element on a coaster at Towers, apart from Nemesis's Helix sort of into the 0G roll. That's only really what beats it for me. But yeah, I do wish it's a bit longer. I rate it I think it's number 7 in my rankings, below Galactica. And I know loads of people will be screaming in the comments for me ranking it below Galactica. They are literally practically interchangeable coasters, and I mean, if Oblivion was longer, it would beat Galactica, no question, you know, if it had an inversion or two in there, or even an airtime hill. But it's just a drop, a turn, and that's it really. Well, a lift hill, a turn, a drop, an overbank into the brake run, which is sat on forever by the way. Like, the brake run is just so much longer than the ride because you just always sat there forever because they run a few shuttles on there, and with each holding 16 people they can take time to load. But yeah, it's going in good. I know some of you be like, rate it higher than goods, like, but yeah, as I said, if it, you know, if it had a few other elements in there, just even, you know, the odd one, it probably would make great or god tier. And I know plenty of people probably would put it up there. It's one of those rides that sort of rates for most people, like me, one of sort of the middle coasters at Towers in terms of how good it is. But I know for sure that some people would definitely put it up there in great or world class. Anyway, on to Revolution, the aerodynamic shuttle coaster that opened at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in 1979. Now this is a very underrated coaster. I personally rate it higher than Oblivion. It's at my number 5 as of when I did the top 10 last year, because it's so intense that it's just like 2 launches obviously with a loop in the middle, but it's so intense. You go forwards around the loop and then backwards, and when you go backwards around that loop it is just so intense. It's the most intense element, I'm putting it out there, that I've ever experienced on a coaster. I've experienced no element more intense than this. However, I'm not going to be rating it an excellent or world class just because it's so short. But yeah, it's an underrated ride, and I know some of my friends would rate it higher than I do. Like, I rate Big One above it, and I know a lot of people wouldn't rate Big One above it, but just the views and the drop on Big One do it for me and put it slightly above Revolution. But there's only one difference in my rankings, and I'm sure it'll stay like that because they're both really good coasters. I rate them similarly to each other in terms of in my rankings, and it's going in good. Anyway, next up then we have Rita. Now, this ride gets a lot of hate. I think it's overhated. Loads of people say it's rough. I don't think it's that rough. It's got a good launch. It is quite short, I'll admit. But You know, you got a couple of airtime hills in there. The turns pull some G-force, as does the launch, but it is pretty average, and for that reason I'm going to put it in meh. And I've actually just thought, to be honest, I'm going to move Kamali down to meh, because when I think about my rankings, probably would rate Kamali similar to Rita, and Kamali's not in my top 10 as is Rita. They're probably both about the 15 mark in terms of the best coasters in the UK, so yeah, it's going in meh, as is Kamali now. Now on to another coaster I haven't ridden, and that is Solar Ride at Thorpe Park, a Gerstlauer Eurofighter that opened as the world's first horror themed roller coaster in 2009. This looks incredible. It really does. Like, in terms of my sort of rankings for Thorpe Park roller coasters, I predicted this will be number 3, just above Nemesis Inferno, due to its sort of theme and how intense people say it is. I have obviously ridden one Eurofighter before, and that is Speed No Limits, which I absolutely love. A lot of people do say that Speed is the better coaster, but obviously Soar does have the theming, so I do predict that it'll rank higher in my rankings. I predict that it will make my top 10, and that it's going to sit probably somewhere between Big One and Nemesis. As you can see, Nemesis is up there in world class, and Big One is there in good. It's in the middle, so I'm going to put it in excellent, because that's where I predict it will rank. Like, I saw a POV of this the other day, and it was better than I remember it after watching the POV a long time ago. Like, the theming in that dark ride section looks incredible. It's got obviously that pre-drop indoors, and wow, the theming. Like, it's got the inversion in there as well. Like, it is definitely the best pre-drop section I have seen on any roller coaster. Like, it's incredible. And then for the coaster itself, it looks really intense. I've heard people say it's really intense. If Speed No Limits is anything to base it off, it's really intense. So yeah, it's going up there in excellent, and I'm sure it will stay after a ride. One thing people say is that it's a bit rough. Only some say that though. A lot of people think it's perfectly bearable, but then others, you know, say that about Speed, and I found Speed to be perfectly bearable. So yeah, I'm not going to let that sort of affect where I rank it here, to be honest. Yeah. Anyway, now we're on to Shockwave, the Intamin stand-up coaster at Drayton Manor that opened also in 1994, along with Big One and Nemesis. This ride gets a lot of hate. A lot of people say it's quite rough. I honestly don't know a lot about this coaster, to be honest, and it's sort of hard to judge it because I've never ridden a stand-up coaster before. I would love to go back to Drayton Manor one day and ride this, but I don't know when I'll be going back there, especially with what's going on at the moment and the fact I can't go to parks. And I'm already planning to do some parks next year, but I'm not going to tell you what, because I'm going to save that until my Reflections 2020 video, because I'm going to be doing a video reflecting on 2020, similar to my 2019 one that I did at the end of last year. I think I'm just going to put this in meh, because yeah, I don't really know what to expect from this ride, to be honest. Some people say it's quite rough, so yeah, we're going to put it down there in meh. You know, it's probably going to be quite average. Some say it's good, some say it's bad, and yeah, I don't really know, so I'm going to put it there. Anyway then, next we have Spinball Whizzer. A very underrated ride. I really enjoy this ride at Alton Towers. Yeah, it's obviously a marathon spinning coaster, and yeah, it's going to be featuring in a video soon actually, where I'll talk about it a bit more. But yeah, I think it's really underrated. Like, I'm going to say now, I personally rate it above 13 and Rita, two of the coasters in the Big 7. Like, it's a really fun ride. It's quite intense. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. A lot of people seem to say, like, think it's rough. I can see what they mean, as you do get slammed into some of the corners and stuff, especially with the way it's designed with its spinning. But like, that doesn't bother me at all, to be honest. And I think, you know what, I'm going to put it up here in goods. Why not? Yeah, it's really fun. Or do I put it in meh? I don't know. Where do I rate it compared to Kamali? Oh, I don't know where to put it. You know what? I put it in. Wait, is there any? I put it in meh. I don't think there's actually any more room in this meh category, to be honest. May have to do some moving around and have a think about this later, because yeah, it doesn't look like there is any room left. So yeah, we'll think about that later. Next, then we have Stealth, another Intamin launch coaster, and this time at Thorpe Park, not Alton Towers. Wow, this is another Thorpe Park ride that looks absolutely incredible. You know, it's a bucket list coaster for me. The launch on that is like the third fastest acceleration in the world. Something like 0 to 80 in 1.8 seconds, 1.9, something like it's incredibly fast. I know it's 80, but I'm not exactly sure on the acceleration, because they did actually increase the acceleration. It used to be 2.3, but they lowered it to 1.9, 1.8. I can never remember. Basically, because Stealth kept rolling back. Because if you don't know, this ride is basically a launch with a 205-foot top hat. Yep, it's the second tallest roller coaster in the UK after Big One. And then you pretty much go down that top hat, which is vertical. It's basically a vertical spike, pretty much. You go down that top hat, enter the airtime hill, and into the brakes. But it looks absolutely incredible. Yeah, it's a very short ride, but yeah, it just looks incredible. It really, really does. And I honestly think this is going to be my second favourite roller coaster at Thorpe Park, to be honest. Above Saw and Nemesis Inferno, which have already featured in this list, obviously. I think it's going to be my second favourite at the park. And in terms of my rankings, again, I think it's going to rank somewhere between Big One and Nemesis. So we're going to put it up here with Saw in excellence. Next, then, we're on to the Swarm. Now, this ride, oh wow, it's another one at Thorpe Park, and it's the theming. It's sort of themed to this sort of disaster, and you got like a broken like church. You got like a fire engine, I believe. You know, a massive billboard. You got like an aeroplane wing and stuff like that you go under on the first drop. Like, it's arguably the best themed roller coaster in the UK. Wicker Man, you could debate, is better theme, but I've heard it's really intense. It's a B&M wing coaster, the first one in the UK, opened at Thorpe Park in 2012. Never rode anything like this. I'm really looking forward to it. My only concern is that some people say that the restraints dig into you and they can be a bit uncomfortable. And as I've experienced on rides like Mumbo Jumbo and Avalanche with uncomfortable restraints, they can take away from it a bit. But I just think this ride looks incredible. And I don't think it will be as good as Icon, but it could give Nemesis, which I've already ranked in here, a run for its money. And I think, personally, with it being sort of that high, I'm predicting it's going to rank that high, I think that it should go right up here in world class. So, yeah. Next, then, we have the world record. It's still the holder of the world record for inversions in the world. And that is the 14 inversion roller coaster, the Gerslar Infinity at Alton Towers. And it is the Smiler. Now, this is a ride that gets a lot of love and it gets a lot of hate. For those who don't know, I've not actually ridden it yet, because the last 2 times I went to Alton Towers when I wanted to ride it, it was broken down most of the day. It is very, very unreliable, this ride, let me tell you. So as I said, some people love it, some people hate it. I'm in the middle of it because I don't know where to sort of what I'll think, to be honest. I'm well known, if you've watched previous videos, for really not liking the theme of this ride, hating the soundtrack, and as for the ride itself, I don't know, because a lot of people say it's quite rough. yeah, a lot of people say it's quite rough, and some of the inversions on there, well, in particular really, the final three, and definitely the exit to the Cobra roll, so basically the 12th inversion on the ride, looks really, really, really badly profiled. It's impressive off-ride because it's in such a small space, but I can imagine some of those inversions are just badly profiled as a result of that. And the exit to the Cobra roll, you watch POVs of that and you can tell it's rough, because you literally get properly like jerked out of that Cobra roll, and I can just imagine being flung into the right hand side of that restraint. Like, well, I think it's the right. I can't judge, but yeah, probably judging that it looks like it kind of exits sort of left out of it. I can imagine just getting flung into, well, either side of the restraint really. I don't know, but honestly, I predict that it'll be my number 3 in the Big 7 at Alton Towers. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I prefer Big One to it or something like that, with how rough it may be, because I can imagine it, if it's as rough as some people say it is, it'll take away from it. For me, I don't think I'll be one of those people that absolutely hates it, but I don't think I'll be one of those who absolutely loves it. And it's weird really, because everyone seems to either love or hate the ride, but I think I'll be slightly on that it's a good coaster side just because of how many inversions it has. And inversions don't necessarily make a better coaster, but I'm sure some are bound to make the ride better as long as they're smooth. And the airtime hills as well, they both look incredible, the ejector airtime hills, especially one in the second section of the ride. And I'm literally looking forward to the airtime more than the inversions, to be honest. So yeah, but the theme and soundtrack, I can already tell, really let it down for me. And I think it's going in good. A lot of people will be screaming at me in the comments again, but I think personally there's more people who love it than hate it, and it does seem a bit overrated, to be honest. So yeah, especially because I'm not a fan of the theme or the soundtrack. You know, the Marmalizer's quite cool, but yeah, the station's a bit bare. The downstairs room is okay, I guess. It's not got much going for it theming wise, considering Alton Towers is a theme park. So yeah, I'm putting it in good. Now we're going to have some trouble because of where I want to rank 13, to be honest. Because yeah, 13. A lot of people say this ride is underrated. Personally, I disagree. I think I don't think it's underrated at all, really. I see people like rating this as like the number 2 coaster, number 3 in the Big 7 at Towers, and I'm just like, no. For me, it's just too tame for that, to be honest. The first drop is underrated, I'll give you that, because you get some good airtime on that, actually. It's a steep drop for a family coaster, to be honest. But the rest of that outside section's quite tame, not got a lot to it. And then you've got the indoor surprise element, skip 10 seconds if you don't want a spoiler, but you've got a free full drop, like on the drop chart, and then you get basically launched backwards through this crypt building. The crypt is what they call the indoor section of the ride, because that's what it's themed to, and you go outside. And then one of the most intense elements of the ride, actually, is this sort of launch back into the station. Yeah, I'm classing it as a launch. And this sort of where you kind of push forward into the station is literally more intense than Icon's launch. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it is. It really, really is. But yeah. Anyways, for 13, I'm going to put it in meh because it's just okay. I think with the complaints Shockwave gets about it being rough and uncomfortable with the restraints, I think I'm going to put that down to bad. I'm going to put 13 in meh because I rate it similar to Rita and Spinball Wizard, as I said. I rate it above Rita and below Spinball Wizard. So yeah, that's where I'm going to be ranking it. Next then, we're on to Colossus. Now, this is, I'm predicting this will be my 5th favourite ride at Europa Thorpe Park, sorry. Mainly because people complain about it being unbearably rough. A lot of people find this ride unbearable, and more so than this find the Smiler really rough and unbearable, to be honest. Although I watch POVs of Colossus, and it does look smoother than the Smiler to me. It doesn't look like the inversions on it don't look badly profiled, so I don't know whether it's the wheels or what. And it does have those sort of intermin restraints, I believe, like on Rita, so they are quite close to your head, which I believe contributes to it. But honestly, the theme of this ride, I really like the look of the Lost City area at Thorpe Park, which it's located in. It's just like, I love the look of a lot of Thorpe Park's areas, to be honest. It just looks like a really nice area. And the theme of this ride, I prefer it to the Smiler, honestly, and I prefer the soundtrack by far to the Smiler as well. It also has an airtime hill that looks good, so despite it, you know, having only 10 inversions, being often regarded as being rougher than the Smiler, only 1 airtime hill when the Smiler has 2, I think I'll rate it higher than the Smiler, to be honest. Or I might not, it's hard to tell, but I think this is another one for the good category, which I've also run out of room in, so I'm going to have to do some more moving around later. But yeah, in fact I'm going to have to do some moving around now, to be honest, as we've got here Vampire, the aerodynamics suspended coaster at Chessington. These are sort of the same model as inverted coasters or similar, you know, suspended below the track, and this is what sort of led to the inverted coasters. The difference is, on rides like Vampire, the trains are free swinging, so around the corners they're free to swing side to side, whereas on the inverted coasters like Nemesis, the trains are more fixed to the track, so they always follow the profile of the track rather than being free to swing out. It's an okay coaster again, really. I like the theming of it. It's very well themed, to be honest. But yeah, I'm gonna have to. Oh, where do I need to do some moving around here. Right. What we're gonna move up? I think we will put, you know, Big One. It's done a lot for the UK. Let's put Big One in Great, because I did enjoy it this year, to be honest. So yeah. And is there a ride in Meh we could put in Good? Now let's put Kamali back in. Yeah, let's put Kamali back in Good. I know I moved it down to Meh, but now I think about it, it is good. It's a good ride, to be honest. I know I'm doing so much moving around, and then we'll put Vampire in Meh because it's just okay. And we're gonna have to do some more moving around in a second as well. They really should have made like more room for these rides, like, yeah. Anyway, right. Next up is Velocity, and this is a Vekoma booster bike. It's another launch coaster, and yeah, it's a motorbike coaster, the only one in the UK. It's again, it's at Flamingo Lands. And it is, yeah, it's a good ride actually. I prefer it to Rita, to be honest. You know, it's unique, and it can be a bit rough around the edges, a bit rattly, but that doesn't bother me. It's a really fun coaster, and it belongs in Good. It's a fun ride. It's my number 10 in the UK, for those who don't know. And for this I'm going to have to move another ride up to Great, and I think I'm going to move Revolution because I rate that similar to the Big One, and it is a really, really intense ride. You know what, let's put it up there at Great, or Excellent I should say. It's very underrated. I keep saying Great, don't I, instead of Excellent. Excellent. It does belong up there. And then we're going to put Velocity in Good because, you know, it's nothing special, but it's a fun coaster and it deserves to be in that Good category. But yeah, we're on to our final ride now. And that is the incredible Wicker Man at Alton Towers. The GCI wooden roller coaster. It's a family coaster, but unlike 13, it's got a bit more to it. It doesn't feel quite as sluggish or as tame. You know, it is quite a wild ride, really. In terms of being a family coaster, it's borderline thrill. Like, it's fast, you know. It maintains its pace throughout the layout. Unlike Megaphobia, which, you know, people say that's fast, but I honestly found Megaphobia to be a bit sluggish. I honestly think Wicker Man is much better than Megaphobia. It has some airtime as well. Some people would probably disagree and say it doesn't have much airtime, but you know, you do get some good amounts of airtime on the sort of issue towards the back. Like, it has more airtime than the big one, I'll give it that. Like, in terms of Megaphobia's airtime, like, I'd honestly say that it doesn't have as much, but like, Megaphobia being as rough as it is just takes away from its airtime, because like, when you get airtime on Megaphobia, it's painful. Wicker Man isn't rough for me. It's obviously, it's a wooden roller coaster, it's a GCI, so it is a bit rattly, but I wouldn't say it's rough. And to be honest, it's been getting a lot of hate lately, Wicker Man. Like, it's really undeserved hate. Don't know, people have said a lot. I've heard a lot of people say it's rough this year, but then I've asked others and they've said it's running no different. So I don't know. A lot of people think Wicker Man is overrated, and maybe it is. I don't know, but I wouldn't say it's rough. Like, it's definitely more overrated than Icon, I'd say, Wicker Man, with the way people rate it. Like, yeah, it is one of the most overrated coasters in the UK, probably, but I still absolutely love it. Some people definitely rate it higher than me. Some would say it's better than Icon. And then obviously you got people this year who seem to not be rating it that high at all. So the rate it's going, Wicker Man's going to be becoming an underrated coaster. But it's one of those, like Icon. You know, new ride back in 2018. It got a lot of hype around of it. Except its hype seems to have died down even more than Icon's has, because I mean, Icon gets no hate, just some people say it's overrated, but this ride, people say it's overrated and it gets hate. But for me, it's going all the way to world class. You know, the theming, the pre-show's incredible. Like, in terms of a themed roller coaster, like, it is the best, probably the best. I know I said Swarm maybe, but yeah, either two of these rides is the best themed roller coaster in the UK. So I think for that alone, it deserves to be in this category. And you know, it's a very, very fun ride. But yeah, these are my rankings for the roller coaster on this tier list. As I said, link in the description to this, so you can have a go, and be sure to DM me your opinions on Instagram or Twitter, and the links to that are also in the description. So to summarise then, in world class we have Icon, Nemesis, The Swarm and Wicker Man. In excellent we have Sorter Ride, Stealth, Big One and Revolution. In good we have Galactica, Nemesis Inferno, Oblivion, The Smiler, Colossus, Kamali and Velocity. In meh we have Avalanche, Megaphobia, Mumbo Jumbo, Rita, Spinball Wizard, 13 and Vampire. In bad we have Hero and Shockwave, and in unbearable we have Infusion.
So there you have it, me ranking UK roller coasters on TierMaker. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to enable notifications, because I'll definitely be doing some more sort of reviews of the rides on that list, particularly when I've been to Thorpe Park. I'll be doing the Thorpe Park ones. And I'll be doing some more top 10s as well, where I'll be talking about all these rides in more detail. But yeah, and I'll definitely be doing some more tier lists in the future as well. Before I go to Thorpe Park, there's a dedicated Thorpe Park tier list for Thorpe Park rides and not just roller coasters, so I thought it'd be fun to sort of do that before I go, and sort of my expectations on the rides, and then after I've gone, do it again and sort of compare before and after. And also with the ride reviews, Someone suggested, when I asked for you guys' opinions on what videos you'd like to see on the channel, someone suggested that I do sort of reviews of rides, of what I think they'll be like before I ride them, and then basically summarise my thoughts on what the experience is like after I've been on those rides. But yeah, I really want to get to 100 subscribers by the end of this year as well. Like, come on guys, we can do this. With my dedication, you know, creating these videos for you guys, creating this content, and you know, you guys' support, you know, to the channel, yeah, I'm sure we can do this. So yeah, be sure to subscribe and show your support for the channel, because it really does help it out. But yeah, be sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and be sure to comment down below your thoughts on how I've ranked these rides and your opinions. Remember that you can complete this tier list. There's a link in the description, and you can share the results with me if you want. Just drop me a direct message on Instagram or Twitter. As I said, links in the description to those are there. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.